Y'all know I love insane predictions. Well, today I have sat down and listed out every game that I think will release on the Nintendo Switch, but not just every game. I have specific titles. I've made not great box arts for these games, and I've even planned out every single release date for these games. So sit back, relax, and let's get into it. Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Botox Games, and yes, today we will be predicting every single first-party Nintendo Switch release in 2024. But not only that, we are also going to be predicting the exact release dates for these games as well, which I think just really adds a layer of insanity to my prediction here. I feel like a lot of people are being pretty negative and kind of thinking that there won't be that many exciting games on the Switch this year, and maybe you think this list isn't exciting once we get into it, but for me, if we got all of these games, this would be really like the perfect final year send-off for the Nintendo Switch. It's also worth noting, if you are new to the channel, I'm under the assumption the Switch 2 is releasing in 2025. I feel like they will go one more full holiday season without new hardware, but I have plenty other videos about that topic, so if you're interested in my thoughts why I think that, you can go watch those, of course. Now, I have here 15 games that I think Nintendo will release in 2024, as well as some honorable mentions of potential titles they could release once we get to the end here. 15 is more than we've gotten in the past 2 years of the Switch, so just that sheer number alone is a little optimistic, but I thought 15 was a nice, good number to kind of predict with. Of course, once we get to it, we will be getting a Pokemon game this year, most likely, so I feel like 15 isn't super unreasonable, but maybe knock that down to like 13, and that's a little bit more realistic. I'm not too sure. So let's just go ahead and get into this. Starting in order, on January 19th, we are seeing another Code Recollection release. This is a remake of the Trace Memory game from the DS in North America, or if you're in Europe or Japan, the Another Code games that we got on the DS and Wii. We had a demo for this game released back in December, and I played that demo and I really enjoyed it, so much so that I went back and played Trace Memory on the DS, and I really enjoyed that game as well. So personally, I'm very excited for this, but it's a known quantity, so not that exciting for this video. And then already getting into the new game releases, this might be a curveball. If you know, there's already a game announced for February, which we'll talk about, but I think we'll get something announced and released before then. So based on previous February Direct dates, you know, the timing of when Nintendo does their first of the year Nintendo Direct, they've all been on Wednesdays, and they're all usually within the second week time frame of February. So in 2021, it was on February 17th, which is actually a little bit later, but in 2022, it was on February 9th, and in 2023, it was on February 8th. So based on that, I think we will get a Direct on February 7th or February 14th, leaning towards February 7th though, because the 14th of next month is Valentine's Day, and they could do a Direct on Valentine's Day. There's nothing really stopping them from doing that, but I would still just lean towards the 7th. They usually do it earlier in the month. So because of that, I think we will see a shadow drop, as we've been seeing with a lot of the Directs in 2023, and that shadow drop will be Metroid Prime 2 and 3 HD. And since it's a shadow drop, this would give this game a Wednesday release as opposed to a Friday release, like we saw with Pikmin 1 and 2 HD. I think Prime 2 and 3 will be shadow dropped in the February Direct, and that'll be our first hint of a lot of Metroid to come this year, hopefully. And while we're already talking about it, and I have this image up here, I think this game will get a physical release, a 2-pack physical release on April 5th, a few months or a few weeks after the digital release drops. We've seen them do this with Prime Remastered last year, as well as Pikmin 1 and 2 HD, so I don't really see them not continuing that. I think we will get a physical copy of this game just a little bit after the digital release. But then on February 16th, we also have Mario vs. Donkey Kong releasing. That's going to be exciting, I guess, if you're a fan of those games. I mean, I don't know, I haven't seen that much excitement for it, but I'm interested in checking it out. I never played the Game Boy Advance original, although I did enjoy Tipping Stars on the Wii U and 3DS. We also have on March 22nd, Princess Peach Showtime, so this is our first big new release of 2024. This, I think, is going to be a pretty big sales success for Nintendo. Critical reception, I'm a little bit less confident about. You know, we'll see how well this game does, who's even developing it. At this point, I kind of think it might just be Nintendo EPD, so internally done, which usually, based on that, you would assume pretty high quality, but maybe it's being outsourced to another developer, maybe it's Intelligent Systems, maybe it's Next Level. I'm leaning towards EPD though, so I think that should be a pretty good game, and I'm excited to play it. And that's basically it in terms of concrete release dates. There are a couple other games that we'll get to, like Luigi's Mansion and Paper Mario, that we know are coming, but we don't have exact dates for, but there's not that much currently announced. If you follow Nintendo closely, you know that usually they announce games and release them within a couple months. Like, if the February Direct happens this year, we will most likely have a handful of games announced in that Direct that will release by the end of June. If a June Direct happens, we will most likely have, at that point, the entire year announced in that June Direct. So beyond just Metroid Prime 2 and 3 in the February Direct, I think they will also announce at that point for April 19th, Tomodachi Life for the Nintendo Switch. Now, this is the one game on my list here that I think is actually just kind of unrealistic. But you know what? Screw it. I'm playing to my audience. I really want this game to happen, and I feel like it just doesn't make sense that Tomodachi Life hasn't happened. This feels like a perfect spring game, so right in that April timeframe, and considering the sales success of Tomodachi Life on the 3DS, I feel like at this point, with the Switch having, maybe 140 million units sold, Tomodachi Life would sell so well. It just seems weird that they haven't even done it yet. Honestly, maybe it's a little bit too late. Maybe they would save this for the Switch too, but I still feel like it would be a major title for the Switch this year, and an April release just makes a lot of sense. That kind of puts it in a similar time frame to when Miitopia came out back in 2021, where that was announced in that February Direct that year and released a few months later. I think something similar will happen with Tomodachi Life. Now, the big question here is this a full new game? Is it more of an enhanced port like Miitopia was? I'm not too sure. I think it'll be, kind of, the jury will be out on that one. We'll see the trailer and we'll be like, okay, there's a lot of new features, but it's still just more of Tomodachi Life. It kind of has the same island setting as the original game on 3DS, so maybe it'll be a sequel, maybe it'll be an enhanced port, who actually knows? With that being said, I do think we will get another remake announced in February, and that is Fire Emblem 4 Remake. So that is Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War. This game has kind of been an open secret for a few years now. Emily Rogers reported that it was happening, I think, back in 2022, maybe even 2021. And what's interesting about Fire Emblem 4 Remake is, it's been rumored for so long, but in the files for Fire Emblem Engage, we actually have kind of some code names or some numberings that indicate that there is a missing Fire Emblem game that potentially is already done at Nintendo, or at the very least was being developed concurrently with Engage. So Three Houses internally is referred to as FE17. Engage is referred to internally as FE19. So where's FE18, Nintendo? What's going on here? So I think we will get Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War announced and released in a very short time frame, similar to how we saw Echo's release back in 2017. That game was announced, I believe, in January and released in May in America, April in Japan. Fates, I believe, in Japan was a June release, so it's not an uncommon time frame to release a new mainline Fire Emblem game. And I think, if you're watching this video and you're like, oh, it's way too soon for another Fire Emblem game, I don't know, man. Sometimes they be pumping these games out. Especially when you look at the release structure and release timing of the Engage DLC in 2023. I mean, they released all that DLC in such a short time frame, whereas with Three Houses, they kind of spread it out over the course of a full year. I feel like maybe they released all that DLC so quickly to kind of just get it out of the way and give people more time to breathe before releasing and announcing another Fire Emblem game in 2024. So May 24th, 2024, I think we will get Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War. And then the final game I think we will have seen announced in the February Direct is a Mario sports game. So this is something that I think maybe would be saved for the next console, but probably not. Camelot so far on the Switch has released a game every 3 years, and although they've only released 2 sports games on the Switch, it's not really a pattern. I don't know. I feel like it's time for another Mario sports game, and in this case, I think it'll be a Mario Sports Mix type of compilation game. We saw them do this in 2010 with Mario Sports Mix on the Wii. It seems to me that there's a potential pattern for me here, where at the end of the life cycle of a Nintendo console, Camelot will put together a kind of Mario Sports compilation game that includes tennis, includes golf, and maybe their dumbed down modes, but also includes some quirky other things that maybe wouldn't make sense for a full new game, like Superstars on the 3DS, which had horse racing as a mode. You're not going to make a full Mario horse racing game, but in a compilation, that actually might make a lot of sense, or like basketball or something, right? This is a pretty low stakes release. It'll sell well just based on brand name alone, and I don't think people will be too angry if a new Mario sports game comes to the Switch when the Switch 2 is looming. And given that Tennis Aces, Golf Super Rush, and Mario Strikers Battle League all released in the June month, like literally all 3 of them released in June, I think this is a safe bet for a June 14th release. But that's actually not the only game I think Nintendo will release in June 2024, because I think on June 26th, we will get another Nintendo Direct, and in that Nintendo Direct, we will see this pattern continuing of Nintendo Shadow Drops, and this time I think it'll be Luigi's Mansion 1. This is another personal one, although considering we've seen potentially the entire Metroid Prime series come over, and Pikmin 1 and 2 get ported over as well, I feel like it'd be weird for them to do Luigi's Mansion 3 and 2, and then just leave 1 not on the Switch. The only issue is here, I'm not sure if this would get a physical release like the other GameCube ports we've seen from Nintendo. In fact, maybe this is something that would just be bundled with Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. Maybe it's a pre-order bonus. Maybe it's just added to Luigi's Mansion 2 as part of that physical copy. And that way, the $60 price tag on Luigi's Mansion 2 is way more justified if it includes Luigi's Mansion 1. I don't think they can sell Luigi's Mansion 1 as its own physical game, considering it's like a 4-hour game. Maybe they could for like $30, but I don't think they would do that, so maybe it's just kind of bundled with 2 HD. And speaking of Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, that game was announced for summer 2024. I've actually struggled with where to put this one because in my mind, this feels like such a perfect Halloween game. I know that'd be a very long time from announcement to release for a port of a 3DS game, or a remake if you want to call it that. But I'm going to put this in July. I think July 19th, right in the middle of summer, makes a lot of sense. And if we see Luigi's Mansion 1 come over, this is kind of just replicating what happened with Pikmin 4, where that game came out in July, and in June in that direct, we saw Pikmin 1 and 2 come over. So I think we'll see a similar kind of thing happen here with the Luigi's Mansion series. And then we'll have all 3 on the Switch, which I would be very happy to see happen. Now, going into August, I think that'll be the first month that we don't see any first-party Nintendo games released. It feels like they usually leave August open. There have been some games in the past, like Kirby Dream Buffet and Astral Chain, but usually August is a pretty quiet month because they usually have a very strong holiday season. If you've noticed, Nintendo, it seems like they normally try to have a game every other week starting in September, or at the very least in October. So I think due to the Switch's declining hardware sales, they will have a very heavy marketing push to release a lot of games. Some of those might be ports, some of them might be remakes, but they will be a new game release for the Switch, but also a price drop and maybe a new Switch model. We're not getting into those specific things today. I did another predictions video earlier this year, so go check out that. But I think this will be a very heavy holiday season. Even if the games aren't that exciting to you, I think they're going to try to release a lot to really hammer in that this is the Switch's last holiday season and it's going out with a bang. And once again, this is all assuming we don't get a Switch 2 in 2024, because if we get a Switch 2 in 2024, well, actually, I don't think this would change that much, but one of them would almost certainly be a Switch 2 game. So starting off in September, I think on September 13th, we will see Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door released. This might be way too late, to be honest. They didn't give any kind of time frame, so considering Luigi's Mansion 2 HD was slated for summer, that makes me think Thousand Year Door is later. It was rated by the ESRB, so maybe it's releasing even sooner than I think, but I'm just going to be, I'm going to play it safe and say September 13th for Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. That feels kind of late. That's a full year after it was announced, but I think that's fine. And then 2 weeks later on September 27th, I think we will see a new Kirby game released. Now, what kind of Kirby game this is, I'm not too sure. I would say something like an Epic Yarn ports or a Planet Robobot ports. Maybe those could happen. But given that we get a Kirby game pretty much every year, I just feel like there has to be something. Maybe this is an eShop only game. Maybe this is a remake or a port of one of the 3DS's kind of multiplayer focus games, like Battle Royale here. Maybe it's an Air Ride port, something Kirby releasing in September. I went back and checked. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, if they don't release a Kirby game at all in 2024, that'll be the longest gap between Kirby games I think since the franchise started. There might have been a year or two in like the 90s where that happened, but ever since Return to Dreamland, at the very least, and really since the DS era, there has been a Kirby game at least every 18 months, so I feel like it'd be kind of weird if there wasn't something. Maybe it's a smaller eShop game, like I said, but some sort of Kirby game, most likely a multiplayer-focused spin-off, releasing on September 27th. Mark it down in your calendars. If I'm somehow right about any of these, really, by the way, I deserve a pat on the back. But the holiday season is just getting started because we still have 4 more games to go through. On October 11th, I think we will be getting Metroid. Maybe Prime 4. I have predicted Prime 4 to release for so many years now, and I'm almost like scared, right? I'm scared to predict this because certainly the game's almost finished, but maybe it's not. Maybe this is something they save for 2025. Maybe it's saved for a Switch 2, kind of launch or near launch game. I'm not too sure, but I'm just going to stick to my guns and say October 11th, Metroid Prime 4 releasing. If Metroid Prime 4 doesn't release, I think we will get something else, maybe from Mercury Steam. Maybe it's a Samus Returns port, maybe it's a remake of Fusion, but October 11th will be a Metroid day. Prime 4 is the most likely scenario, but maybe something 2D. October 18th, I think we will get a brand new Mario Party game. So far on the Switch, kind of like with the sports games, we've seen a potential pattern developing where every 3 years, Indie Cube has released a Mario Party game. They were actually doing way more than that before the Switch generation. There was a 3DS game like almost every year. Then they did Wii Party U and all that. So maybe it's not Mario Party. Maybe it is more of a kind of generic or general Switch party game. But I'm just going to say Super Mario Party 2 for the sake of making it more exciting. And hey, that's your big holiday Mario game. Of course, Paper Mario will still be selling, Luigi's Mansion 2 will be selling in October, but Mario Party is a proven seller, and I don't think that's something that needs to be saved for like the first year of the Switch. I think they can get one more Mario Party out when the original Nintendo Switch. Now, this next one could totally happen earlier in the year. Maybe you put this in September, move the Kirby game around, move Thousand Year Door somewhere else. But we've seen time and time again that Nintendo tries to have some sort of new Zelda game every single year. And I really feel like it's time that we get some sort of 2D multiplayer Zelda game on the Switch. I think it's crazy that we haven't yet, to be honest. I mean, when the Switch first came out, everybody was like, oh, we're going to get a multiplayer Zelda game. The Joy-Con are perfect for it. It just makes so much sense. And at that point, Triforce Heroes wasn't that old. And while I would love a brand new 2D Zelda game, I think that is most likely being saved for new hardware. So a 2D multiplayer Zelda game, I feel like is niche enough that, you know, why not just go ahead and release it on the Switch? There's already a huge install base. It's not really going to sell consoles realistically for the next platform, so just release it on Switch 1. Now, the question I have is this a new multiplayer game? Or could it actually be a remake of Four Swords Adventures? And maybe it's even some sort of Switch Online kind of bonus release, right? People keep asking for Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, and while I do have those written down as other possibilities for the Zelda game that could release this year, I feel like Four Swords Adventures actually kind of makes a decent amount of sense just because they're running out of the main games to remake, dog. You know, we're talking about an Ocarina of Time remake coming to Switch 2, and at that point, you know, if we get that, we'll get Majora's Mask, and I think a Twilight Princess remake, you know, 10 years from now isn't super unlikely, but they're kind of running out, right? I feel like Four Swords Adventures is a game most people didn't play because it was on GameCube, so releasing it on the Switch actually would kind of make a lot of sense. And then that way they can save Wind Waker, they can save Twilight Princess for the next console, and just pad out that generation with more remasters of Zelda games. And then finally, on November 15th, this one I'd be shocked if I'm wrong about, but we'll see, a new mainline Pokemon game. We get a new mainline Pokemon game basically every year, the week before Black Friday, and this year that would line up on November 15th. Now, the question is, what kind of Pokemon game is this going to be? A lot of people, and even the games themselves, have been suggesting a Black and White remake, possibly being developed by Ilka, the team that did Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. I would like to see Black and White remade, maybe not by Ilka, but I don't know. Something about the vibes it feels too soon. You know, I know there's so much hints and things suggesting it from the Scarlet and Violet DLC, but in my mind, I can't quantify a Black and White remake happening this year. I feel like that's still like 3 years away. Maybe I'm completely wrong, and maybe we do get Black and White remake this year, but I would lean more towards either another type of Legends game, maybe that's set in Unova, or a Johto remake. I don't think it would actually be called Let's Go Johto or anything like that, but some sort of Johto game. I mean, by the time this would release, Heart Gold and Soul Silver would be 14 years old. Regardless, November 15th, mainline Pokemon, write it down. And that brings us to the end of the year because I don't think they would have a game in December. They have had December releases in the past, but I don't think they're going to do it this year. Now, I do have two honorable mentions that I want to go over really quick. First of which is a Square Enix game. So almost every year of the Switch, Nintendo has published one of their like HD 2D games or something else entirely. So a Square Enix game isn't super unlikely, although considering they're most likely busy with the Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake, and Team Asano, I feel like would be prepping development for either Octopath 3 or something new entirely for the next console, I'm going to lean towards that not happening in 2024. And the other game I have written down here is a new Warriors game, specifically a Xenoblade Warriors. I would love to see that. As a Xenoblade fan, I feel like that has to be the next franchise that Koei Tecmo kind of tackles from Nintendo, but maybe we get another Zelda Warriors before that. I don't think Tears of the Kingdom has enough content to do a Warriors game, but maybe we get like a Hyrule Warriors 2 that is more celebration of the entire franchise. That would be really exciting. And kind of like with Kirby, if we don't get a Warriors game in 2024, that'll be the longest gap if you count like Hyrule Warriors Legends and Definitive Edition. We've gotten one, I think, like every 18 months ever since the original Hyrule Warriors release, so it is about time. But with the Switch 2 looming, maybe a Xenoblade Warriors makes more sense as one of the launch year games for that console. Now, something worth noting, if you count Metroid Prime 2 and 3 as one game, which I did for this list, that's 15 games. However, I believe 9 of them are remakes or ports. So that is a very port-heavy year with 6 new games. So the new games we would be getting would be Princess Peach Showtime, Tomodachi Life, Mario Sports, the potential new Kirby game, Metroid Prime 4, Mario Party, and that's actually it. Now, maybe Pokemon would be considered more of a new game because even the Pokemon remakes usually have a lot of new elements, with the exception of Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. And maybe that Zelda game, that new multiplayer Zelda game, isn't a remake. So if that's the case, it'd be a little bit more balanced, but I'm still expecting a lot of ports and a lot of remakes in 2024 as the Switch winds down, because I do think, and I did a whole nother video on this, I do think the Switch 2 will be announced this year, probably in that like October timeframe. So while I am expecting a pretty nice year for Switch owners in 2024 in terms of quantity and quality and variety, I am expecting a decent amount of ports and remakes. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. What do you think of my list, and what would you change to make it an even better year for your own personal taste? Do you think I'm being too optimistic, or do you think I don't even have enough on this list? Do you think there's too many remakes? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Of course, subscribe here for more Nintendo Switch news, reviews, coverage, all of that stuff. Follow me on Twitter @BotoxGames, and join the Discord that is linked down below. Until next time, folks, peace!